Hello, well it's day 66 in Sydney's COVID lockdown and it's locktail number 11. And we're still over 1,200 cases, so I'm calling this one the Covid Tailspin. I'll explain why. So this is based on a late 1800s cocktail called the Bijou. It was initially a Grand Marnier cocktail, but in 1900, the famous bartender Harry Johnson changed it and made it famous with a recipe based around green chartreuse. Now, Bijou in French means jewel, and he was using the gin as the diamond, Italian sweet red vermouth as the ruby, and green chartreuse as the emerald, and he used equal parts. The cocktail didn't make it through prohibition. It really didn't do well after the 1930s, and it basically came back into vogue and was rediscovered in the 1980s. But tastes had changed somewhat, and green chartreuse is a very strongly flavoured drink, so it was remodeled with less of the chartreuse. Now I mixed this yesterday and I'm doing the video today, and I played around with this quite a bit. The recipe I like the most comes out of Death & Co.'s cocktail book, the bar in New York, and I've adjusted it just a little bit on theirs to suit my palate, maybe yours. So in this 11th and first 1900s cocktail to mix at home, what you need is 45 mils of gin. Once again, I'm using the Botanist, which is a fantastic mixing gin, suitable for most cocktails. So 45 ml of the Botanist. I'm using this fantastic Oscar 697 vermouth. It's relatively new on the market. It's made in Piedmonte in Italy. The label and the branding was done by a Sydney designer. I'm using a full shot, 30 mils of that. This is an absolutely amazing vermouth. This you can just drink by itself. I highly recommend it. It's very traditional in its approach, but it's got this amazing contemporary flavour. I'm dialing back the chartreuse to 15 mil. I think you want to taste it in the cocktail without it being overpowering. And a couple of dashes of orange bitters. Now you can get Angostura orange bitters. There are plenty of other orange bitters around. Don't use normal Angostura, go for orange bitters. And the Death & Co. and some of the other recipes for this cocktail call for a Campari rinse. Just gives it a little bit of bitterness. All we're really doing with that is coating the glass. Probably gave it a little bit more than I need to do a coat. Getting rid of that. You can do, probably if you're doing this better than I am, you probably prepare that before you make the cocktail. Get the cocktail nice and cold. And with that Italian vermouth and the little bit of green chartreuse, it gets this lovely sort of golden colour. Pour that in. If you like a Negroni, this is sort of in that sort of style. It's in that sort of vogue. It's a little bit more complex than your average Negroni. I think this is a really sophisticated cocktail. It's probably, out of the 11 I've made so far, my favourite. Just as good as the one that I made yesterday. So that's the and it was also, by the way, the reason for the tailspin. There was a very similar cocktail that sort of moved along at the same time as the Bijou called the Tailspin. It was sort of came back in at about the same time. It's a very, very similar recipe to the Bijou. Really the only difference with the Tailspin is that Campari rinse. So I think, given the situation we find ourselves in Sydney at the moment, giving it the Tailspin name was probably appropriate. So here's to staying safe, here's to beating COVID, and here's the cocktail or locktail number 11, the Covid Tailspin. Cheers.